Hey guys, Crow Cooper here with On the Black. So we're in the hot stove season, as you guys know, and I've been having a lot of conversations, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, with a lot of different Met fans out there about different things the organization should do this offseason in terms of roster moves and what we can expect going into 2012. And one thing that I just want to kind of throw out is I think that us Mets fans have to be realistic about our prospects for this offseason and what we can and will be doing going into 2012. And I've got 5 things that I think us Mets fans need to be realistic about this offseason. The first one is Jose Reyes. I think that we need to start warming up to the idea that there's a good chance that Jose Reyes may not be back. Now, as a Mets fan, obviously I want him back, but I want him back at the right price. And to me, the right price equals a number of years. I don't want to see the Mets go more than 4 or 5 years on Reyes. You know, he's got a history of leg injuries in the past. His legs are really his entire game, defensively, offensively, running the bases. And I just don't want to see them commit themselves to more than 4 or 5 years. Now, obviously, there's a lot of talk about Reyes talking to the Marlins. And hey, if the Marlins want to offer Reyes 6, 7, 8 years, or some other team out there wants to do the same, and Reyes leaves, then you know what? I'm not going to jump off the building about that. Because you know what? Again, I don't want the Mets to go more than 4 or 5 years on Reyes. And I think if another team gives him that much, he will probably go to that other team. So again, I hope Reyes is back, but I think we need to be realistic in the fact that there's a good chance that he may not be back. The next thing I think we need to be realistic about is what our expectations of Ruben Tejada could possibly be going into 2012. Hear a lot of people talking about, oh, don't worry about it. Tejada can step in and play shortstop if Reyes does leave. And you know what? Defensively, you're right. Tejada can do the job. But we as Mets fans cannot make the mistake of expecting Ruben Tejada to be Jose Reyes, because he is not that type of player. He's a much younger player than Reyes, and he's still developing. Now, personally, I was encouraged by Tejada end of the year. His bat started coming around a little bit, so on and so forth. But if Reyes happens to leave and Tejada happens to be the shortstop next year, I think we have to be realistic about our expectations from Tejada as a developing and growing player and not expect him to be Jose Reyes. The third thing I think we have to be realistic about as Mets fans is Daniel Murphy. I hear a lot of people talking about, well, if Reyes leaves, or even if Reyes leaves or go, Daniel Murphy should be the second baseman next year for the New York Mets. Mainly because he can hit. And I think we have to be careful there. You know, if Reyes is back, I'd like to see some competition in spring training between Tejada, Murphy, and Turner. I think it should be an open competition. If Reyes is gone and Tejada is the shortstop, then I still think it should be a competition between Murphy and Turner and maybe someone else that's not even in the organization now. But to just outright give second base to Daniel Murphy, I don't think is a good idea. He is defensively challenged at best. He has trouble turning the double play. And, you know, to me, a winning team needs to be solid up the middle. And when I say up the middle, I mean catcher, shortstop, second base, and center field. And defensively, Daniel Murphy is not the best option for the Mets at second base. Could he possibly be in some sort of platoon position? Sure, but just to outright give second base to Murphy, I think is a mistake, and we have to be realistic about what we expect for Daniel Murphy and look at second base as a whole going into spring training and figure out who is the right fit, whether that's Murphy, whether that's someone else, or whether that's a platoon situation at second base. The fourth thing I think we have to be realistic about going into next season, and even now in the hot stove, is where we are with our starting pitching. And listen, you know, I like guys like Dickey, I like Nice, I like G. I think that those guys are fan favorites, and we all like them. But when I hear some people talk about that, you know what, if we just have Santana, Dickey, Nice, and G, we'll be fine with starting pitching next year. When I hear that, you know, I got to throw up a question mark, because when you look at those guys right there, excluding Santana for a minute, you've got a bunch of 3, 4, and 5 starters. You don't have a number 1 or number 2 in that bunch. And you know, some are going to say, okay, well, Santana's your number 1 or number 2. And I got to throw up a question mark there too, because we haven't seen Santana throw a pitch in almost 2 years now. And so I want to see Santana back out there on the mound. I want to see him consistently pitching well. I want to see him looking something like his old self before I'm ready to pencil him in as the ace of the staff. And what I'm trying to say here is just be realistic about the starting pitchers that we have in-house right now and compare that to what the Phillies have, what the Braves have, what the Giants have, what the Cardinals have, and you'll see that we have a lot of room for improvement in our starting pitching, and that should be one of the priorities this offseason during the hot stove, pitching as a whole, starters, and then definitely the bullpen. So I think we have to be realistic about the guys that we have in-house. Sure, they're fan favorites, but again, we've got a bunch of 3, 4, and 5s, and we need to improve at the starting pitching spot. And speaking of starting pitching, I've been asked a lot about Wheeler and Harvey, specifically our guys in the minors, and if those guys will be ready in 2012. And that brings me to my number 5 thing that us Mets fans have to be realistic about, and that's our young pitchers in the minors, especially Harvey and Wheeler. I think we've got to leave those guys alone. In my opinion, and from things that I'm reading, those guys are at least a couple of years away. And so being realistic, we shouldn't expect to see either one of those guys in 2012 playing a significant role in the starting pitching for the Mets. I think we need to leave those guys alone, give them time to develop and grow, and possibly see them in another 2 or 3 years. So that's my 5th and final thing that I think us Mets fans during this hot stove season and heading into 2012 need to be realistic about. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll talk to you soon.